Clara Whitmore had never been afraid of anything the world could measure. She wasn't afraid of numbers, risk, or headlines. She wasn't afraid of walking into rooms where men twice her age went silent when she spoke. By the time she was 30, she had already sold her first company. By 40, her name was synonymous with power. Magazines called her ruthless, brilliant, untouchable. What they never wrote about was the way she stood outside her daughter's bedroom every night, hand resting on the doorframe, listening for Lily's slow, steady breathing before she allowed herself to sleep. Lily was 12 sharp, observant and far too perceptive for her age. She noticed things Clara wished she could hide, the exhaustion behind her smile, the way her phone never stopped buzzing, the empty seat across from them at dinner. One evening, while their untouched plates cooled between them, Lily broke the silence. "Mom," she said, closing her notebook, "why don't you ever date?" Clara didn't look up. "I'm busy. That's not an answer." Clara sighed. "Dating complicates things." Lily studied her for a long moment. "You make billion-dollar decisions every day," she said softly. "But you're scared of dinner?" The words landed harder than any boardroom challenge. A few days later, after far too much thinking, Clara agreed. One blind date. One evening. No assistance, no security, no background checks. Lily would come with her non-negotiable. Lily had insisted. The restaurant was discreet and refined, the kind of place where wealth blended into the walls. Clara dressed simply, her status invisible to anyone who didn't know her face. Lily walked beside her, clutching her notebook like a shield. They were seated by the window when a man approached their table with a young girl holding his hand. "Excuse me," he said politely. "I think we're meant to be sitting here." His name was Daniel. He wasn't what Clara expected. His suit was clean but worn, his posture relaxed rather than rehearsed. His eyes held fatigue, but also something warmer, patience, maybe. The girl beside him, Emma, looked about Lily's age. Her braids were uneven, clearly done by someone trying their best. Lily stood immediately. "Hi, I'm Lily." Emma smiled back. "I'm Emma." Within minutes, the girls were talking animatedly, comparing schools and favorite books as if the adults didn't exist. Clara noticed how Daniel watched them, not hovering, not controlling, just present. Dinner began easily. Daniel asked Clara about her day, and when she answered vaguely, he didn't press. He listened. Really listened. That alone unsettled her. "What do you do?" He asked eventually. "Finance," Clara replied after a pause. He nodded. "That must keep you busy." That was it. No curiosity about numbers? No impressed reaction. No probing questions. Clara didn't know when someone had last accepted her answer without trying to measure its worth. Daniel spoke to Emma gently, lowering his voice when he corrected her, smiling when she laughed too loudly. When she spilled her drink, he waved it off with humor instead of embarrassment. Clara watched it all. Her mind, trained to assess value, suddenly focused on something it couldn't quantify. Halfway through dinner, Clara stepped away to take a call. As she returned, she caught fragments of conversation from a nearby table. "Single dad, I bet," one woman whispered. "Look at his suit." Another laughed. Probably trying his luck. Clara didn't stop walking, but something inside her hardened. When the bill arrived, Daniel reached for it automatically. Clara placed her hand over his. "I've got it." He hesitated, then nodded. "Desserts on me?" Lily leaned toward Clara and whispered, "He's nice." "Nice how?" Clara asked quietly. "He doesn't pretend." That night, Clara lay awake staring at the ceiling. She thought about Daniel's hands, steady, worn. About the way he spoke to Emma, as if her thoughts mattered. About how, for once, she hadn't felt like a headline. They met again, and again. Walks in the park. Ice cream afternoons. Homework sessions where Lily and Emma sprawled across the living room floor. No luxury, no performance. Just time. Daniel never asked about Clara's wealth. When she had to take calls, he didn't complain. When she canceled once, he simply said, "Another time." One afternoon at a cafe, Clara noticed a familiar glow on a nearby phone screen. Her name, a headline. Daniel saw it too. He went quiet. "You're..." That Clara Whitmore? He asked carefully. She nodded. Yes. He looked down at his coffee for a long moment. I wish you'd told me. I wanted to know if you liked me, she said honestly. Not what I own? He met her eyes. Then nothing changes? But Clara knew something already had. For the first time in years, her world felt fragile. And for the first time, she wasn't sure she wanted to protect it. Daniel watched Lily and Emma laughing across the cafe. Unaware of the weight settling between the adults, Clara realized something. Then this wasn't just a date. It was the beginning of a choice. She had never learned how to make, and she didn't yet know how unbelievable that choice would become. Clara didn't sleep the night after the cafe. Daniel's words, "nothing changes," echoed in her mind. Not as reassurance, but as a question. Because everything in her life had always changed once people learned who she was. Conversations shifted. Eyes calculated. Affection became cautious or ambitious. She had built walls so high that even she forgot what was on the other side. The next morning, Lily noticed. You're thinking too loud, Lily said over breakfast, stirring her cereal. Clara smiled faintly. Is that a thing now? It is when you forget to drink your coffee. Clara laughed despite herself. She realized how rare that had become over the next weeks. She and Daniel kept seeing each other, but something subtle had shifted. He was still kind, still present, but more careful, like someone walking across ice that might crack. Clara couldn't blame him. She had dropped a truth heavy enough to tilt the ground beneath them. One evening, after the girls had gone to sleep during a movie night at Clara's apartment, Daniel finally spoke. I need to ask you something, he said. Okay, why me? The question was calm, but it carried weight. Clara thought carefully. Because you never tried to impress me, she said. Because you love your daughter in a way that doesn't need witnesses. And because when I'm with you, I forget what I'm supposed to be. Daniel absorbed that quietly. And what if I can't fit into your world? Clara answered without hesitation. Then maybe my world is the problem. He didn't respond right away, but something in his expression softened. Not everyone reacted that way. At the office, rumors began circulating. Clara's calendar was lighter, her presence less constant. Board members noticed. Advisors asked questions masked as concern. You're distracted, one of them said during a meeting. This isn't like you. Clara didn't deny it. At a charity gala she attended out of obligation, she overheard her own name spoken in careful tones. She's changed. Since when does she bring a school teacher as her +1? Temporary phase, someone else murmured. She come to her senses. Daniel felt the difference too, though he never complained. But Clara noticed the way he went quiet at events, the way he stood slightly apart, the way Emma clung closer to him when she sensed unfamiliar judgment. One afternoon, after Emma came home upset from school, Daniel finally admitted what he'd been holding back. Someone made a comment today, he said carefully, about Emma being lucky to have access to certain opportunities now. Clara's chest tightened. What did she say? She asked if we were poor before we met you. The word cut deeper than Clara expected. That night, after Daniel and Emma left, Clara sat alone in her living room, staring at the city lights she had once believed were everything. She thought about power, about legacy, about what Lily would inherit not in money, but in values. The next morning, she did something no one expected. She called an emergency board meeting. The announcement sent shockwaves through the financial world. Clara Whitmore was stepping down as CEO, not retiring, just letting go. She cited personal priorities, a desire for balance, confidence in her team. The headlines were merciless. Analysts speculated recklessness. Friends called her impulsive. Some accused her of weakness. Daniel found out through the news. He arrived at her apartment that evening, stunned. You didn't tell me you were thinking about this. I wasn't, Clara admitted. Until I was, Clara. This is huge, I know. He searched her face. Did you do this for me? She shook her head. I did it for myself, for Lily, for the person I forgot how to be. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Daniel said, I don't want to be the reason you regret your life. She took his hands. You're the reason I finally recognize it. Time passed differently after that. Without the constant pressure of control, Clara learned to exist in smaller moments. School drop-offs, parent-teacher meetings, grocery shopping without assistance. She burned her first homemade dinner and laughed when Daniel ordered pizza. Instead of pretending it didn't matter, she volunteered at the girls' school, sitting on uncomfortable chairs, listening instead of leading. Other parents didn't know her history, and she didn't offer it. Daniel watched her adapt with quiet amazement. One evening, as they walked home from the school fundraiser, Daniel stopped under a streetlight. "I need to say something," he said. "I've spent my life teaching my daughter dignity, independence, self-worth. I can't let her believe happiness comes from being rescued." Clara nodded. "I understand. So, if we do this," he continued, "it has to be because we choose each other, not because one life is easier than the other." Clara smiled, tears welling in her eyes. "That's the only way I know how now." The girls noticed the change before anyone else. "You smile more," Emma told Clara one afternoon. "And you listen more," Lily added, months later. On a quiet Sunday, Daniel invited Clara and Lily to a small house he had recently bought. It wasn't large. The paint was fresh, the furniture modest. "I did this on my own," he said, a little nervously. Clara looked around, then smiled. "It's perfect." Later, as the girls played in the yard, Daniel took Clara's hand. "I don't know what the future looks like," he said, "but I know I don't want to face it without you." Clara squeezed his hand. "Neither do I." Across the yard, Lily watched them, then opened her notebook and wrote a single line. "Sometimes the bravest thing isn't building an empire. It's choosing a life that doesn't need one dot, and for the first time in her life." Clara Whitmore felt unimaginably, unbelievably rich.